The destiny narrative, a story where a character changes into more of who they were always meant to be. What makes the great stories great? From the epic hero's journey, to the simple tales of change, to the complex modern fables, to the stories that inspire people to grow, and the campaigns that change minds. What makes these stories so engaging, persuasive, and feel so authentic? How can we channel some of their powers? The answer to these and many other questions are found in today's episode. It's all about a persuasive, timeless, and engaging story form that has never been fully defined and broadly applied until now. Welcome to Original and Powerful Ideas. My name is Troy Hadoop Campbell, and I use a scientific mind, artistic heart approach to capture original and powerful ideas so you can apply them in your own pursuits. I've spent my life understanding the science and theory behind how humans think and behave, and applying those ideas artistically and practically as an applied Duke behavioral science PhD, former Disney Imagineer, Oregon professor, and consultant for Nike, Netflix, and many more. Across this podcast, we'll be exploring together original and powerful ideas captured in many different forms that are meant to be new and relevant to you, whether you are a world-class innovator, a scrappy upstart, or just a curious person with some headphones on. Quick note to my frequent listeners, I know that intro is long, but I keep that long intro because every episode of this podcast is often people's first episode, as they come based on the topic. And today especially is one of the episodes that people may be coming just for. Today's idea is the original idea of the destiny narrative, and the episode is in the form of another book-worthy idea. With an awareness of its complications, its nuances, and its occasional dark side, this episode seeks to define an immortal type of storytelling for the first time in a new way, to help you better understand it, sometimes resist it, sometimes embrace it, but most importantly, use it in your own storytelling. The inspiration. In most all great epic stories, the main characters change. But it's a special type of change. They change into who they were always meant to be. The princess was secretly always a princess. The boy on Tatooine always had the Force inside of him. And the girl named Moana, who was called to the sea, was always meant to lead her people across it. In most all major religious tales, fables, and epic modern narratives, this story occurs again and again. England's King Arthur was always destined to pull the sword out of the stone. China's Monkey King was always meant to grab the Ryu Jingyu Bang and save the worlds in heaven. And Disney's Elsa was always meant to let it go and unleash her frozen magic and be her true self. But the destiny narrative is not just in the great epics, the great fictions. If you look around, you'll see that the destiny narrative is behind some of the most successful storytelling everywhere. Personal growth narratives that show people unleashing their deep personal potential. Product commercials that tell people to let out their inner self or reveal their true natural beauty. Leaders that champion change by telling their organization or country to discover or rediscover what they truly are. Individual job applicants that convincingly argue for their dream job through an "I was meant for this" narrative. Teachers that motivate students by convincing them they have a talent inside of them. And pride campaigns that have championed the idea of coming out to be one's true self. In all these stories, a character grows, but they specifically grow into more of who they always were, more of themselves. It's a change, but it's a change with at least a strong hint of destiny. The idea. The destiny narrative is a story in which a character changes into who they were always meant to be. The destiny narrative usually follows or hints at a three-part structure, which includes number 1, the always. A character always has had at least one, usually positive, quality. Number 2, the struggle. The character struggles because they have not discovered or do not know how to act on their always quality. Number 3, the discovery. The character then discovers or rediscovers their always or how to act on their always, usually in a triumphant or eventually triumphant fashion. For instance, in the 1977 film Star Wars, Luke Skywalker always had the Force inside of him, but he didn't know that. So he struggled through his entire youth, spending his days looking up at the stars and wanting more, but not knowing what. Until one day, Obi-Wan Kenobi helped him discover that he always had the Force inside of him. He then went on a great journey to find himself and save the galaxy with the Force. The destiny narrative is a metaphor and model. And in applying the model, the character does not need to have a real destiny or something innate or biological. The character or characters just need to change into more of who they already are or who they have been. Over this episode, we'll dive into details, talk about the science and complications, such as a fourth step, double destiny, and the dark side, and we'll return to some epic fiction examples. But for the moment, we're going to dive into applications that focus on persuasion. Applications. Apply leaders. Apple's Steve Jobs channeled the destiny narrative when he led a massive change in the 1990s. Jobs more or less made this argument to the people at Apple for why and how they were destined to change. He explained that at Apple, they always used to be this creative company that was distinctly different, with amazing ads and a rebellious spirit. But Apple had struggled recently, financially and spiritually, as they'd focused on technology without the rebellious design spirit and storytelling around the products. Until today, when Apple would rediscover that creativity and demonstrate it with an ad campaign that celebrated rebels and misfits with a new slogan, "Think Different." It's who Apple had always been. Political leaders also channel the destiny narrative to win elections. Barack Obama frequently talked about what he called an essential promise of America, and that America was, quote, founded on the idea everybody should have an equal opportunity to succeed. After Obama, Donald Trump made his destiny narrative in just 4 words: Make America Great Again. These politicians definitely represent a different ideology in their stated politics, but one with a similar psychology in their storytelling. In their core narratives, both argued that America needed to change, but not into something completely new. Instead, to act in line with qualities that America fundamentally always had to some degree, and that now America needed to further or rediscover. There is so much more to why these politicians appealed to their audiences than the destiny narrative, but I have purposely chosen this tense example to illustrate there is a universality to the type of stories that work, that win, that persuade, even if those stories are trying to persuade very different things. Apply marketing and advertising. Much of product marketing, from beauty product, sports drinks, and self-improvement tools, deeply channel the destiny narrative. when, instead of telling customers, "You're bad, change," they instead say something like, "You've always had an inner goddess, an inner athlete, an inner warrior, but you've struggled sometimes. But now with this product, you will discover that inner self more and be the real, true, and best version of you." It's an effective strategy, maybe ethically questionable, but it's also the strategy that's been used by probably your favorite activists and the people who have probably inspired you to actually be the best version of yourself. Apply, activists, and teachers. The best social and climate activists and the best math and design teachers often channel the destiny narrative. By not saying to people, "You are immoral or stupid, now change," but instead saying something like, "You've always wanted to be good. There's a part of you that cares for nature. You've always had a math side or you've always had a creative side, but recently or for a long time, you've struggled to see or know how to be that. But now after this message, this information, or this moment in a classroom, you will discover a way to be more of something you always have been and cared about." Note, this is not always the right technique for an activist or teacher to use. However, it is often the case that in many situations, the destiny narrative is what is missing from activists and teachers who don't reach audiences. The power. Much of the destiny narrative's power comes from resolving the conflict between two major human motivations: the motive to change and the motive to stay the same. We want ourselves and others to change, grow, improve, evolve, and transform. But we also want ourselves and others to stay the same, be authentic, be coherent, and stay true. This conflict that the destiny resolves can make it one of the most, if not the single most, compelling, engaging, and persuasive narrative form across many situations. Stay the same and narrative change. That is the power of the destiny narrative. One more application. One last place we see people channel the destiny narrative for success is with personal and career narratives, where their storytelling makes it seem like they were destined for the job or life they want or already have. So many of you have asked that I share more about myself and my stories in these episodes, rather than just theories and applications. So with this section, which is on personal destiny narratives, I thought I'd add one of my destiny narratives here. I always was a science kid, but I was always more interested in people than protons and art than arithmetic. Because of this, I struggled in my science and art classes. I didn't struggle with grades, but I struggled just to find happiness and consistent motivation to be great, and just couldn't find my place. Until one day I walked into a psychology elective and I discovered what I always was meant to be. On that stage, I saw a person speaking theatrically, but also scientifically and practically, applying the language I was good at, science, to the topics I cared about: people, art, life, design, business, and beyond. I began to understand how I could use a scientific mind, artistic heart approach to do things like I'm doing right now, fusing art and psychological science together to explore and share so many ideas like the destiny narrative. A destiny narrative is, of course, an oversimplification, but it can be a good way to begin to tell your story in a way that showcases what's unique about you or what you deeply care about. as well as how you've overcome struggles, grown, and matured into a strong self-understanding. Likewise, many people do have truly important discovery moments, and those discovery moments can be telling portals into who they are or who they will become. Given this, one might also consider, usually a great story doesn't end with discovery. There's a common fourth step of the destiny narrative where a character chooses to affirm or reaffirm their destiny, often by doing something costly, frightening, or difficult. If you are writing an epic fictional character like Luke Skywalker, he can't just discover the Force inside of himself. He needs to then use the Force to blow up the Death Star. If you are a person applying for a job, you can't just tell a great destiny narrative of discovery. You need to then explain how, since you've discovered your destiny, your always qualities, you've consistently affirmed your always qualities through successful actions. The dark side caveat. The destiny narrative can play a role in having undeniable pernicious effects. It can lead to what scientists often call psychological essentialism, the idea that certain traits are simply inherent to certain groups or individuals and cannot be acquired by those without the inherited trait. Though, of course, this is true in some rare cases. On a personal level, an overbelief in the destiny narrative can lead people to personally stay stuck and not believe that they can change. Or it can lead them to fruitlessly spending time to discover a special secret hidden self or talent that's just not there. In politics, the destiny narrative has often been used with ideas such as America's manifest destiny that have led to the privileging of certain types of people and the dehumanization of certain populations. And possibly, in reaction to this, writers are changing how the destiny narrative looks in modern stories. A trend. For what felt like always, the destiny narrative was massive in mainstream storytelling, specifically in the form of the epic hero's journey and chosen one stories. So many chosen one stories. But then it seemed as if these types of stories struggled. The chosen one and traditional hero's journey stories seemed stale, or even against many modern values, or felt unrelatable to the complicated, holistic lives that people were living or striving for. But now there is a rediscovering, as mainstream epic entertainment tells destiny narratives in new ways. Here are two of them. First, many of the modern stories we see involve characters having a destiny that involves them not being this aggressive hero, but something more domestic and loving. For instance, Drax the Destroyer in the movie Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is straightforwardly told that you weren't born to be a destroyer, you were born to be a dad. And Ken in the Barbie movie learns that he has always been Knuff. Second, it seems as if a certain type of destiny narrative that involves not one but multiple destinies, a double destiny, is taking hold and resonating with modern audiences. I'm the girl who loves her island. I'm the girl who loves the sea. I am Moana. Disney's 2016 Moana, which is consistently the #1 or #2 most streamed film of the entire year in the United States, is a wonderful example of this. In Moana, Moana has both the destiny to leave her island and also to lovingly lead the people of her island. At the start of the movie, those destinies conflict. The story is about how these destinies are resolved. Of course, double destinies aren't completely new, but if you look around at how so many successful movies are using the destiny narrative, you'll find that this seems to be a common trend. A tip, a trick, a theme, and one more thing. A tip. Tell people they already are the people you want them to be. I'll say that again. To get people to change, tell people they already are the people you want them to be. Too often, we only focus on telling people what they lack and how they need to change, often telling them they need to change everything about themselves. Or at least they infer that. While sometimes that strategy may work, usually a strategy that has more of a destiny narrative can work better. This is because telling people to dramatically change can feel not only difficult, but also unnatural or even morally wrong. Telling people they already are, at least partially, something, and they just need to be more of that, can feel more natural, authentic, and easier. It reframes everything in a more positive and psychologically sound way. A trick. When you are doing something new, make it also seem like you're always. New things seem cool, but they can also lead others to have a sense that you are being inauthentic, not real, and potentially unable to do the new thing. For instance, a band might change their sound, or a brand might introduce a new product extension. In general, what works best with audiences is when that band's new sound or that brand's new product represents something the band or brand has always been into, or used to be into, or recently has had extensive, genuine experience with. So now the new is not just new, but also old in the sense that it reveals a part of who you truly are. To put it simply, as the rapper Drake once rapped, "Look, the new me is really still the real me." A theme. The destiny narrative is there even when you think it might not be. For instance, a character might radically change in a fictional story, such as a villain becoming nicer. But when this change usually works best is when the story lets us know that there was always more to this character than we realized. Additionally, in a story, a character might reject a destiny, but usually it's because the person has another destiny that they are choosing to follow. Of course, in good stories, the destiny narrative is not always there, but for the most part, there's usually a hint of destiny, even when it seems like there's not. One more thing. Let's dip into a little controversy with the suggestion that the growth mindset works best when it has a hint of destiny. Research on the growth mindset can generally be distilled down to the idea that when you believe you can change, you're more likely to. Recently, though, the practical application of this idea has sometimes been found to not work so well. In a scientific sense, it sometimes doesn't always replicate. The growth mindset may work better when people see the growth as authentically changing into more of who they always have been, rather than just growing by acquiring some random new skill or quality. The destiny narrative adds identity motivations and probably also additional self-efficacy motivations to many traditional growth mindset interventions. We don't just want to grow in any direction. we want to grow into something that feels more like our destiny. Conclusion. To conclude, here's a destiny narrative for you. You've always been a person that's told great stories and respected great stories. But sometimes you've struggled to replicate your best storytelling and wondered what was missing. You might have even been using some of the famous story templates like the hero's journey, story spine, or problem solution and found them lacking. My hope is that after this episode, you will have discovered something specific and powerful for your storytelling, such that whether you are writing a fictional story about a great character arc, a personal story about personal change, or a story directed at an audience to encourage them to change, that you will see that that change will be more powerful and more persuasive when it has the right hint of destiny. The destiny narrative is something you've used before and consumed a lot of before. It's always been a part of you. And now hopefully with this model and this extended explanation, you can leverage it in a positive, ethical, and effective way in your own storytelling. Always, Troy. This podcast is part of Heidukaus. If you want to learn more about this idea or many others, you can visit heidukaus.com. You can also check the show notes where you'll find my email, troy@heidukaus.com, as well as summary text and many links to help you remember and share the ideas of this episode. If you liked this idea, you might want to check out these other original and powerful ideas. First, you might want to listen to or re-listen to the podcast episodes of The Big Identity Net as it relates to the function of identity and authenticity in persuasion and belonging. You may also want to listen to multi-narrative storytelling, as often the core of a multi-narrative is a person or a brand's always statement, and the destiny narrative is one narrative within the multi. Also, at heidukaus.com, you might want to read the white paper books, Welcome to Team Hero, a model for reaching new and resistant audiences that combines the identity psychology of the destiny narrative with social and other decision-making psychologies. And Lyrics About, a powerful way of writing lyrics for discovery and communication that includes the I Am lyric writing exercise to help you write your own destiny narrative song. Finally, you might want to check out readings on The Hero's Journey by Joseph Campbell and the contrasting story called The Virgin Promise by author Kim Hudson. Two very different types of stories that often are united by having a destiny narrative. Thanks for listening. My name is Troy Heiduch Campbell, and I created Heidukaus to engage with the most interesting ideas and the most interesting people, always with a scientific mind and an artistic heart.